look back at their roster that they had for the COVID year, where they were like the worst team in the league, and it wasn't even close. They had Eichel.
They had good
They have
players.
Sam Reinhart. They had Taylor Hall. They had fucking
Evan Rodriguez.
No, Rodriguez was gone by
Was he
then.
gone
Yeah.
then? Time flies.
Yeah, they had. I mean, at one point they had Ryan O'Reilly too, Vander Kane. Like they had good players.
Linus Allmark.
Yeah, they just. That organization is just a shit show.
Nobody works here. And oh my
I'm
god.
just so sick of like the Sabres getting good players. Doesn't work here. We trade them and they go win a fucking cup.
You know what would be our luck? So this isn't gonna happen, but hypothetically, Stamkos comes here, has 20 goals in like 75 games, has like 45 points.
That would be a very Sabres thing to happen.
Oh my god. Oh, speaking of the Sabres, I know we're kind of off track. What I heard going around is that teams don't take Kevin Adams and the Sabres seriously when taking deals.
He got fleeced doing that trade he made for that. I don't even know the dude's name from Washington.
Malenstein.
I think he's a decent bottom 6 player. He's not worth a second round pick. So we have like a group chat going like for checking from behind where we just like talk about hockey, random shit. And when that trade went through, we got a message from Chris in all capitals saying, "Who the fuck is this guy and why is he worth a second round pick? I hate you, Kevin Adams. We need to fire you." So now that some time has passed since the trade, I don't necessarily hate it.
I am with you.
I think they definitely overpaid by a lot. But I mean, the problem is, from what I'm hearing, is Kevin Adams has been very aggressive in trade talks. The problem is nobody wants to come to Buffalo. I heard they were potentially in on Mangiapane. Didn't want to play here. I can't imagine any of the top free agents want to come here. I want whatever fucking Chris smokes, because he was saying like, now we have Lindy Ruff. A lot of players are gonna want to play here.
Oh yeah.
Who the fuck is gonna want to do that? It doesn't matter who the coach is.
He was like, oh, John Marino's on the block. Well, that connection with Lindy Ruff might help. No, the fuck it did not. I'll tell you that much. Like,
I mean, in his defense, he's a diehard, so I'll give him a little bit of a break. But every time a player becomes available, like, the Sabres should get him. Like Adam Boquist got bought out today by the Blue Jackets. Like, we should sign him. He's still young, and I was like, why the fuck would we sign him, dude?
We don't need him.
No, we have enough young defensemen.
Oh my god, dude.
I mean,
although I will give Adams credit. I do think the second round pick for Malenstein was a huge overpay. But Gergensen isn't coming back. Got to replace him, and I think Malenstein is going to be that hard aggressive. But I heard he's aggressive on the forecheck. He can play shorthanded minutes. I believe he was 5th in the league or 5th on the Capitals in shorthanded minutes.
Last year was his first full season in the NHL.
He still as a bottom 6 role. He had 21 points or 20-something points though in 81 games. 82. I think it was 81.
I still think he overpaid.
I think he's overpaid too. But you want to know what Kevin Adams' explanation was? Yeah, I heard from Seth Appert, the Sabres assistant coach or associate coach, whatever, that he was scared that teams were scared to play Malenstein in the AHL, so that's why they acquired him. I swear to God, that is.
Oh my God.
Oh.
Another thing I want to bring up pretty quickly too, as another thing where I think Kevin Adams got a little fleeced is the Sharks traded with the Sabres to trade up 3 spots. The Sabres got a second round pick and a first round pick, so they swapped first and they got an extra second. Later the next day, Montreal had moved up from 26 to 21. And they swapped picks, so they later in the draft. Normally, those draft picks are a little less valuable, and they gave up more to move up 5 spots in the 20s, and then fucking Edmonton trades for the last pick in the draft, the first round pick next year. Like, dude, I think he got fleeced.
I didn't like that trade from the start, and
my problem with it is so. If it's like draft night, like you're on the clock at 11, you think the guy you want to draft, because every team has a guy like they want to draft. Like before you go in, like when you go into the draft that night, you settle on who you're going to pick. And that might change. Like you'll probably have a list of like, okay, if he's gone, we're going to pick this guy, yada yada yada. But you usually have your heart set on one prospect that, if he's there, we're gonna pick him no matter what, unless like Celebrini somehow fell to 11. But that wasn't going to happen. So the guy the guy the Sabres drafted was probably the guy they wanted the whole time. But why? Look, the thing that drives me crazy is some good defensemen ended up falling to around that pick. You know, if that, I know the Sabres don't necessarily need defensemen, but like they had one of the top end defensemen in the draft. You know, Dickinson and Byam were available there, and so you're at the 11th pick. You know, if you have that call, have that trade offer with the Sharks in the back, and the Sharks might end up paying more because if the guy they really wanted, like Dickinson was probably a guy they wanted to draft. That's why they moved up. If he's there at 11 and you're on the clock, the Sharks are like, fuck, we really want him.
Yeah.
You know, I'll add an extra third round pick or I'll add an extra pick. You lose so much leverage doing that a day early because it's the draft. You never know what's going to happen. Guys slide all the time. You know, just hold on to that pick, see what happens, and then that's what Philadelphia did. Philadelphia, they went off the board with their pick, but they clearly were going to pick him. And Danny Briere was like, you know, he's probably going to be there later in the draft. I'm totally okay with trading the pick. You know, he didn't get a ton for because, you know, Minnesota only moved up one spot, but still, that's how you do it. You hold on to your cards, you don't lose leverage. I mean, it might have been a situation where Mike Grier called Kevin Adams, said, if you don't do this trade right now, the deal's off the table. Call me back in 10 minutes, talk about it, and then, you know, let me know yes or no, and then we're done. Call his bluff. Like, come on. Like, if they really wanted that player and he was available at 11, I'm sure Chris Grier is the Miami one. Cool that two brothers are GMs in two different leagues, but I'm sure, you know, if he really wanted them, he probably would have called them and said, you know what, let's make this work.
And on top of it, too, even if Consta is your guy, he's not a reach at 11.
No, it's not a reach, but if you think he's going to, like, if the Sharks call and, like, they have the 14th pick, if you think he's going to fall to 14, like, you look, okay, who's behind us? Philadelphia, Minnesota. Well, Minnesota's probably going to take a defenseman, you know, and you don't know who Philadelphia's going to pick.
They were all over the place, and they took Jet.
Yeah, so the Sabres still probably got the guy they wanted the whole time, because, you know, when the team trades back, that's usually how they feel like, okay, our guy's going to be there. But why do it the day before? That's what maybe that was the best offer they got.
Maybe either that could have been the best offer they got, true, or I don't know what Kevin Adams' thought process was.
On the night of the draft, I mean, how many times does that happen where, like, a player falls that a team loves and they end up maybe overpaying to move up to get him because they like that player so much?
That's better than overpaying the day before the draft. Like, I totally get overpaying a slight to get a player that you really, really like. But
it's in the heat of the moment. So, like, let's say there's a guy that you had in your top 10 in the draft. You have, like, the 17th pick. And all of a sudden, he's there at, like, 13. You're like, okay, I don't think he's going to fall to 17. We had this guy in our top 10. We're going to, we want this guy. Let's just trade up with, like, Philadelphia or Minnesota, see if they're willing to talk. And, you know, if they really don't want to move the pick, you know, throw in an extra pick or something like that. You know, do something to sweeten the deal a little bit. You know, maybe overpay a little bit, but if you end up getting the guy you want and they pan out, that's worth it.
Yeah, I mean, Kevin Adams' trades have been very, very almost like teams are like, listen, let me put it this way: teams are straight up trying to take advantage of Adams. I've also heard stuff that Adams is being unrealistic and asking for too much for not enough in return. So teams are hanging up the phone on him. They're basically, like I said, they're treating him like he hasn't earned a spot in the GM, which I don't think he still has earned a spot. Like, players don't want to come here. Other GMs and other organizations think this dude's a joke. I totally get why they think he's a joke. And listen, Kevin Adams, great person. He's not built to be a GM. He's a kiss up to the Bagulas.
Well, if the Sabres don't make the playoffs this year, which I think there's a very good chance that they don't, he's going to get fired.
He's gone.
So, I mean, at that point, like, if all your cards are on the table, like, okay, I mean, I'm sure the rest of the league knows that his back's against the wall and that he needs to make the playoffs this year. So I'm sure they're asking for a little bit more than they normally would. But, like, dude, like, if you have a chance to get a good player, even if you have to... Okay, so if I get fired, I get fired. That's the next guy's job. I want to keep my job.
You have so much assets to trade for a top. Like, I'm sorry, we don't need about 8 prospects that are the same exact type of player at the same position.
Let's look at the Sabres forward core, like prospects. Pool, because it's getting pretty ridiculous. The forward.
It's too.
I mean, they have Isaac Rosen, first round pick. Yuri Kulich, first round pick. Noah Ostlund, first round pick. Matthew Savoy, first round pick. The guy they just drafted, first round pick. Anton Wahlberg was a second round pick. Like, their forward prospect pool is pretty loaded. I thought they were going to pick a defenseman because I think they needed a little bit, more help. Like they needed a little bit. I know they have a lot of young defensemen like Power, Darlene, Byram, but Ryan Johnson, first round pick, wouldn't shock me if he made the team out of
Yeah.
camp this year. Kevin Adams said even like at the end of the season, like I'm willing to trade a prospect, to get a player that can help us win now. I don't know what the fuck he has cooking because they bought off Jeff Skinner. Okay, great. You have all this cap space now. You buy off Jeff Skinner, one of the guys on your team that you might not be able to contribute defensively, but he's good for at least 20, 30 goals a year. $32 million in cap space. Who the fuck are you signing?
I mean, this is my worst fear with this is like Jeff Skinner gets bought out and he doesn't find a replacement for him. And it's
I
just
mean,
like
what
I'm not
top end free agents do you think were realistically would sign with the Sabres? Because I
if we're
don't
going
know.
out, if we're talking realistic, I think you're gonna have to massively overpay for one to come here. Like you're gonna have to give them such a pay raise that's like they can't turn down.
I mean, Chris also said like, oh, he hasn't ruled out an offer sheet. I don't know who the fuck he's gonna offer sheet. Yeah, I mean, I was looking at the top free agents. Sam Reinhart definitely he's staying in Florida.
Yeah.
Not that he would have considered the Sabres anyway. Stamkos, I think there's like a 5% chance.
12 million.
I mean, Jed Gensel probably is going to sign with the Lightning. Marchessault, I think they find a way to keep him in Vegas. I heard Matt Duchene is working on an extension with Dallas. Sean Monahan, you have to overpay to get here. Jonathan Drouin would be stupid to leave Colorado. Tyler Toffoli is a guy I would love for the Sabres to sign. I can't imagine he takes the Sabres offer
He's
seriously.
not coming here.
I heard LA is potentially interested in bringing him back. Tarasenko either. He laughs if he gets a call from the Sabres. Teravainen still. I heard they had they had really strong talks with Carolina for Natchez. It's just he does not want to play for the Buffalo Sabres.
I don't blame him.
Stevenson, another guy they would have to overpay a lot to
He's
get here.
not coming here.
No. Anthony Duclair, I think, is another decent player.
That's an interesting one.
Yeah. I mean, but look, we're down to almost 30 on the list, of points last year on cap friendly, from players like UFAs.
Like your Jeff Skinner is a 30-goal scorer. Like you got to replace that. Like
I mean, he had 24 goals last year, but he kind of was bad the last half of the year.
I think he only had like one goal from the All-Star break to the end of the season.
He had like a hat trick against Seattle one night.
You're right.
But obviously he's not worth $9 million a year.
Totally agree.
But I know we've been going on for the Sabres over a little while now, but I don't see a way this gets better.
Somebody brought up a great point that I saw. I was like, if the Sabres want to get out of this, they have to bank on all their draft picks and all their prospects hitting. And somebody also brought up, it's like, at that point, Kevin Adams won't be the GM by the time that happens.
No, he's gone after. I mean, I think for the most part, I think Kevin Adams has done a pretty good job drafting.
I think Kevin Adams as a GM isn't great making deals. I think he'd be draft process.
Honestly, I don't think he is good at drafting. I think he has a very good scouting department.
You know what? You're right. You're right.
Jerry Fortin, for people that don't know, you probably never heard of him if you're not a Sabres fan. He was director of scouting since Kevin Adams, took over as GM. He got promoted to assistant general manager. He still runs the scouting department, though. I think he's largely responsible for why we've drafted so well. I've heard he's a very good scout. I mean, Zach Benson was a great pick. Jack Quinn,
JJ
Peterka was an awesome second-round pick. I mean, Owen Power, he was the first overall pick. You're not really going to fuck that up. Savoy, I think for the most part, he's drafted pretty well. And it's like, this is his fourth year going to Buffalo.
Honestly, outside of that one goaltender they drafted in the second round, they've been almost flawless in the draft. And at least in the first 2-3 rounds, in my opinion. Even they got Komarov in the fifth round, whatever you said. So,
yeah, I think they've drafted relatively well. I think he did good as you could on the Jack Eichel trade.
Mm-hmm.
That was a horrible situation to begin with. You get Tuck and Krebs back in the first round pick, which turned into Coolidge, which I don't know. I don't think he is NHL ready.
I think that he should be you're one of the first guys you trade.
I would trade him.
Right now his value's high to a team that needs goal scoring too.
He's kind of like Jeff Skinner. Like he could score, but he doesn't play defense.
Mm-hmm.
He can disappear for stretches of games.
Yeah.
They have some work to do on the forward course. So they have 1, 2, 3, 4. They have 8 guys. I'm sorry, 7 guys forwards under contract for next year. I think 2 two of them. So they have two RFAs, Peyton Krebs and Beckham Ellenstein. I think
They're both coming
they'll
back.
sign them both. You know, they have at least 4 spots to fill for offense. You know, obviously you'd like to hope that Matt Savoy or Coolidge or one of their top end
I think
prospects.
Matt Savoy can make the team
I think he has to make the team. You know, obviously they're hoping that, but none of these guys I can't really expect to have a big impact. You know, I expect Tage Thompson and Dylan Cousins to have bounce back seasons. I mean, I hope Cousins needs to have a bounce back season. I'll give Tage the benefit of the doubt that he was hurt for most of the year.
One or two guys that I need. Dylan Cousins just said one of them, but also I think Alex Tuck does too.
I think Alex Tuck might have peaked. I think a couple years ago was probably going to be the best year of his career.
So are we saying like we should expect more of like the Tuck we saw last season, and then
I think he'll have a bit of a. I think he's right now. I think the best version of him is 50, 60 points.
I can see that. I would love
He's
Tuck.
a power forward. You know, he's 28. You know, I like Tuck a lot, but I think that year, a couple years ago, like Tage Thompson had 94 points. You know, he had 79 points in 74 games. I mean, he had 60 points, 59 points. He still had a good year. I mean, clearly it wasn't as good as the year he had before. You know, he had like 20 less points in the same amount of games. But, I mean, the Sabres as a whole couldn't really score last year. Dylan Cousins.
He had a horrible
year. I mean, I expect the Sabres to take a little bit more of a step back in scoring. Not necessarily that they're going to lose more because they're scoring less. I really expect Lindy Ruff to force them to develop their defensive game. And, there'll probably be some growing pains because, you know, I think under Don Granato, this is turning into a very long Sabres topic. But I'll wrap it up soon, I promise. Don Granato, I don't think you ever really had a plan. And once teams figured out how to defend against that speed, you know, I was at an event the Sabres had a few weeks ago where Lindy Ruff and Kevin Adams were talking to fans and people were able to ask him questions. And Lindy Ruff, like, brought up, you know, that we have to change how we play because when he was coaching the Devils, like, you know, that year when they barely missed the playoffs, you know, they were hard to defend. They were really quick. You know, once they got going in the neutral zone, it was hard to slow them down. But he said once they figured out how to defend them, they weren't very hard to play against. And that needs to change, obviously. You know, even if they would have made the playoffs that year when they barely missed, they would have got swept. They would have got their ass kicked by the Bruins.
Yes.
Because, you know, you look at a team like the Panthers who ended up upsetting it. That's a team built for playoff hockey.
That team also was coming off a President's Trophy, too.
Yeah, I mean, they had a major shakeup, though, trading Huberdeau. And, you know, they completely changed the way they played under Paul Maurice. They were a defense-first team. They could also score.
They had growing pains in the first half of the season. We saw once they got everything under control in the second half after the All-Star break, they made a run, made it in by 1 point, and they were down 3-1 to the Bruins, lost in 5 to Vegas in the finals.
Yeah, I mean, that was a miraculous run. But, you know, the last thing I'll say about the Sabres is Kevin Adams, your back's against the wall. You better have a good day tomorrow.
Fucking do something. Fucking dude, you're gonna have to overpay for one guy. It doesn't matter. Just we're not asking for the whole flip of the roster, overpay for everybody, give everybody.
He needs to get a top 6 forward.
Yes.
And
You have to.